Hey guys, it's Tristan. So, this is my second attempt at recording this because I'm actually recording it from my webcam, and my webcam keeps falling because I have a TV as a PC monitor, and so I have a webcam at the top, and it keeps falling. So hopefully this one goes well. But I was wanting to go over the history or the events that led up to me having to do my head gaskets before I show you the video of me starting it up. I kind of wanted to explain a little bit. Um, so what had happened was I had left an accessory on in my truck because my radio I can manually power on and off when I want to. It's kind of a bad idea, but it has an override. And I had left it on overnight. And I know this has no correlation with what had happened, but I left it on overnight and it was dead completely, and I had to have my dad come jump start me because my jump starter did not have enough juice to boost it up to jump and to run. And so what had happened was I waited until like 5 o'clock in the evening before I even got it done. You know, I was like, it was my day off and I had a lot of stuff I had to do like on school and stuff. And I've had a problem in the past where my temperature gauge cinder wires would ground out on my intake manifold. And when that would happen, it would read max temperature all the time, and it would say check gauges, max temperature. Like you would start it up and it'd be like 30 degrees outside, and it would straight ping out to max temp. And so somewhere down the line between that night when it died and that next morning or evening, I guess, when I jumped it off, it was pegged out. So I automatically knew. I fixed that like 70,000 miles ago when my intake and temp cinder wires ground out together. And so it did that. And I was like, I'll just drive to my parents' place. They have the workshop. I'll pull it in the driveway and I'll work on it. I got all my tools at work, but I keep all my home tools at my parents' place. They live like 5 minutes from me. And so I was like, I'm just going to drive over there. Well, I drove over there, and this is where I get kind of stupid. So I drove about halfway there. I stopped at the gas station. It was like 30 degrees outside, maybe 40. And I leave the truck running because it's still not up to operating temperature yet. And I run inside, and I grab a drink, and I come back out, and like I said, I left it running. And I noticed I had a coolant leak, and it was a pretty decent sized puddle. It was about that big on the ground, and it was running for about 2.5 minutes. So I was like, okay, this is what, like a 13 quart system or some crap like that. I should have enough to get home. But I couldn't read my temperature because my temperature gauge was grounded out. It was reading max. And I know when my truck overheats because I can feel it. It starts to run like crap. It starts to act kind of sluggish. And anyways, it was kind of doing that. But it was so cold outside, I think it was actually kind of helping it. And I was going down. I was about 3 minutes away from my parents' house, and I start hearing a ticking noise. And I'm doing like 50 miles an hour. And I start hearing a ticking noise, and it gets worse, and it goes from like cylinder to cylinder, and I don't really think anything of it. To me, and because my truck just got out of the transmission shop, I'm thinking, oh, an exhaust manifold bolt might have come loose, or two manifold bolts might have come loose. Looking back, I was being pretty negligent, and it actually got so hot that the lower coolant hose blew up, and it died completely and would not start back up. And I was like 30 seconds from my parents' house when it happened. I had to have my dad come tow me. And it was so embarrassing. A cop pulled up, and it was just smoking out from under the hood at that point. It was that hot. It was so hot that when I got out of my truck and then had my dad tow me home, that was like a 20-minute wait. By the time we got home, I wanted to see how hot it was without touching it, so I spit on it, and my spit sizzled off of the intake manifold. That's how hot it got. And I automatically knew, oh my god, I blew a head gasket, because for me, I let it sit like for about 4 hours, completely cool down. and I went out there before I took my dad's truck home, and I went to start it, and it had that delayed start, like compression issue. It was like choo 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 choo. It like it's kind of hard to describe. I hope I don't run out of time. And anyways, I'm trying not to make a long or a short story too long, so I decided to do head gaskets because my cylinder 2 was at 60 pounds of compression, while all the other ones were at like 120, 130. And I knew I had a cylinder 2 misfire because it drove like pure shit. So I would sit at a red light and it would just shake my whole truck. And it still drove, and I drove it like that for a month because, you know, it's my daily. I didn't have time to park it and let it sit. But in the video, I mentioned it took 40 hours of labor, and it took roughly like 35 to 40. I always say 37 because that's right there in the middle. But what took me so long was I had the heads off in less than 4 hours, but it took me about 5 days, 6 days to do. But I ended up doing a full head refinish, and I ported and polished the TBI heads, which a lot of people say it's a waste of time, but I couldn't help myself. They were off the truck, and I lapped the valves, and I decked the heads on a table saw, and then I used a flat sander. So I didn't have them machined. I know it's kind of silly, but they're cast iron heads, and I sanded them enough. I sanded them a pretty good amount, but you could still see the machine factory finishes in it. And I completely overhauled it and all the other gaskets and lapped the valves and ported and polished it. So that's what took me 40 hours. And I set it, this time I actually did it correctly, and I set it to TDC compression, right? TDC compression before I took everything off. So I marked the distributor, and so when I put everything back together, I put it back at TDC, and I set the valves and everything, rolled it to exhaust, TDC, set the valves, and then put it all back together. And so all I had to do is when I tried to start it, I literally just turned the head, or I'm sorry, the distributor, I turned it, when it wouldn't start, I turned it maybe like 5 degrees, maybe, and it just started right up. And I was so happy in the video because I had been driving for like a month with low compression on one cylinder, so it just felt like crap. And I just had the trains rebuilt like a week prior, so I never even got to enjoy it, you know, like, because I'm not gonna lie, I race car that bitch around. And so whenever I got it running, and I just knew it was running 10 times better than what it was, I was just like the happiest guy on this planet, you know, because like it took me like 40 hours almost of labor to get to that point where I was in that video. So it was like watching your creation just come back to life. And that, honestly, like, that was one of the biggest jobs I did to that truck. I never taken the heads off. You know, I'd always say, oh, I'd LS swap it if the motor goes out. But I mean, it's got 230,000 miles, and it's needed head gaskets for years because it's always kind of misted out. The radiator, like little, I always tell people it looked like someone poured a Sprite inside of a cup, and you get those little bubbles. It always needed head gaskets, and it had a slight running warm issue in the summertime. But I drove it like that for 5 years, a little more than that actually. And what hammered the nail in the coffin was me overheating it. But I just wanted to let y'all know, like, that's why I ended up doing head gaskets on it, and that's why I was so happy in the video, because it ran so good when I was done. So I don't want to make this too long. It's almost 10 minutes long, but I just wanted you guys to understand what led up to this video.
Alright, this is going to be the first startup since I did head gaskets on it. So what I went ahead and did was I know my throttle body cable looks terrible. It's broken. I left the, if you can peek right there at that gold terminal sticking up, that's the ignition coil. So I went ahead and left that disconnected just for the sake of getting oil pressure to the truck before I actually go ahead and start it. So I went ahead and reconnected my battery, topped off the coolant, and so now we just got to let her rip, tater chip. I'm going to go ahead and set my camera right here. I'm gonna squeeze in the vise a little bit. Okay, I'm so nervous. 40 hours of labor, and this is where I'm at. That's what happens when you port and polish heads. Of course. Alright, now I can reconnect my ignition coil. I gotta reconnect my oil pressure sending unit. Okay, I think I got everything plugged back in. I think. Fingers crossed. I think I need to turn the distributor. I turned it a little bit, not much. Let's see. That's the smoke from the paint. I got paint on the headers. Oh man, it's running smooth. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. She sounds so good.